In an obscure village, I encountered the enigmatic jar Maiden. Her body was completely dissolved within the jar, leaving only her skull visible. The villagers blamed me, claiming that my revelation of the jar Maiden's secret had provoked divine wrath. This had resulted in numerous daughters across the village suffering the same fate. Further investigation revealed that all the jar maids had been processed into a raw material for a mysterious powder. The villagers, however, branded me a menace. The deity declared that I was the perfect candidate to become the next jar maiden. The villagers' gazes fixed on me. They too wanted to transform me into a jar maiden. As a daring detective brazen enough to defecate in the emperor's bowl and then present it to him, my ambition is to solve the most bewildering mysteries of the land. Yet nowadays, simply securing a decent meal feels like an indulgence. Sir, are you still hungry? I glanced up to see Bai Yuan's face, etched with disbelief. I swallowed and gently clapped him on the shoulder. What are you talking about? I'm bursting with energy. Before I could finish, Bai Yuan had darted away, his jade pendant swaying from his waist. Clearly, he was on another quest for food. That Bai Yuan. If it weren't for the woman he cherishes, I might wonder if he had feelings for me, disguised as I am in men's clothing. 2 months have elapsed since the dog emperor cast me out to this forsaken village. On my journey here, I was lucky enough to meet Bai Yuan. Without him, I would have perished from hunger. Hey, it seems several more daughters have vanished, and nobody bothers to intervene. There's something truly sinister about this place. 2 plainly dressed youths remarked as they walked past. I mulled over why these disappearances had gone unreported. Surveying the village before me, the air swirled with dust, and the inhabitants were emaciated, their eyes almost popping out of their skulls. Though it was unsettling, it strangely felt appropriate. However, upon entering the village, a wave of intense discomfort enveloped me. Uncle, could you tell me where to find the county magistrate? I halted a bent old man, whose eyes nonetheless gleamed with clarity. He slowly raised his head, his appearance startling me. His face, brown and marred with scars as if eaten away by sulfur, carried a murky, dangerous look. A magistrate? We have none here. He eyed me oddly, puzzling me further. How could there be no magistrate? What was the emperor's purpose in exiling me to such a place? Move along, this old man's mind is slipping. Of course, there's a magistrate. Come, I'll take you to him. A brawny man shoved the old man, making him falter. The elder sighed heavily and looked up at me, seemingly on the verge of speaking, yet he said nothing. With another sigh, he trudged away, leaning on his walking stick. The man seized me, sparking an intense fear within. This man was clearly no friend. Let me go. Help. Someone, help. As he tried to grasp my neck, I dodged swiftly, but he snagged my ankle. Just as he was about to drag me away, a knife stabbed into his hand. Ah! He screamed shrilly, and in my panic, I stood as Bai Yuan moved to protect me. Sir, why did you wander? Don't you realize the danger in this village? Bai Yuan was interrupted as the man withdrew the knife from his hand. He swallowed something, I couldn't see what, but then he surged towards Bai Yuan. Sensing the threat, I grabbed Bai Yuan, who was poised to fight, and we escaped. Surveying the villagers milling about, it dawned on me what was amiss. Though all seemed alive, there was an unnerving aura about them. They moved like puppets, their eyes vacant and movements stiff, as though bereft of souls. Sir, why wouldn't you let me confront him? I eyed the visibly stirred Bai Yuan and sighed. Do you really think you could have bested him? Bai Yuan hesitated, his lips twitching as if to speak, then thought better of it. When I called out earlier, not a soul came to aid me. Bai Yuan arched an eyebrow, seemingly indifferent. And? There's no obligation for them to assist. I shook my head. No, their demeanor was unsettling. It was as though such incidents are routine here, their indifference palpable without so much as a glance. Bai Yuan, too, seemed struck by this, sinking into deep thought. What's our next move? I didn't answer immediately but surveyed the varying heights of the walls around us, lost in thought. I was here to confer with the county magistrate. Failing to meet him could lead to severe consequences if investigated. I again considered the oddly uneven wall. Bai Yuan, you're adept at martial arts. Go inside and see if the magistrate is present in his residence and have him come out to greet me. Bai Yuan discreetly slipped through a dog hole while I continued my patrol around the village. Crack! A subtle crackling sound underfoot caught my attention. I crouched down, alarmed, and found myself staring at a human hand bone. I meticulously examined the area and found a body concealed in the underbrush, uncovering the grim realities hidden within this desolate village. The remains were entirely skeletal, devoid of any decaying flesh or bloodstains. Nearby, tattered pieces of red and white clothing, blood-stained, were scattered about. Flipping over the garment revealed the stark red inscription, Jar Maiden. I drew a deep breath and searched further but found nothing more. I scrutinized the skeleton, observing scratch marks and remnants of flesh clinging to the bones. The flesh had been cruelly stripped from the body, leaving the skeleton discarded. I pondered the grave misdeeds that must have led to such a barbaric fate. Sir, finding you was a challenge. Bai Yuan, breathless, hurried towards me and inadvertently stepped on the skeleton again. Ah! He collapsed onto the ground, a sight I found mildly amusing. His family are butchers, after all. And the magistrate? I hoisted him up, yet he continued to tremble as if haunted. The magistrate? There is no magistrate. Gone? What does that mean? A mix of bewilderment and dread was painted across Bai Yuan's face. I went to the magistrate's residence, but it has been derelict for years, draped in cobwebs. A shock of realization hit me, tinged with an eerie clarity. No wonder it was so difficult to obtain any census information for this desolate village. The Ministry of Household always said there was no list, the village being too small for the upper echelons to concern themselves with. It appears the county magistrate had vanished. But why hadn't this disappearance been reported to the central authorities? Clearly, this was the reason the Dog Emperor had sent me. As night descended, the village was swallowed by an ominous silence. Bai Yuan, lead the way inside. On a dark and windy night, our investigation continued. Bai Yuan and I silently entered the magistrate's abandoned residence. True to Bai Yuan's description, the residence was choked with weeds, bearing no traces of human activity. What's this? Bai Yuan abruptly spoke up, parting the underbrush with a stick to reveal what seemed to be dried blood tracks. Could it be the Jar Maiden? His remark startled me. How did he know of the Jar Maiden? With a surge of suspicion, I aimed a stick at his throat. How do you know about the Jar Maiden? Bai Yuan looked startled, guilt flashing in his eyes. Speak. I regretted it. Encountering someone en route was rarely a good omen. Taken aback by my command, Bai Yuan rubbed his head awkwardly. Sir, I've lived near this desolate village my whole life. I've picked up a few things. Seeing that I was disinclined to engage further, Bai Yuan continued unabated. My uncle once shared that jar girls begin their lives encased in jars as infants. As they grow, the jars are continually adjusted to keep their bodies stunted while allowing their heads to enlarge. I set the stick down gently. Is it common to have jar girls in this village? Bai Yuan clapped his hands, his expression notably theatrical. Not just common. Nearly every household here has one. I was deeply disturbed. Such merciless customs were shockingly normal here. Does no one ever intervene or rebel? At my words, Bai Yuan quickly covered my mouth. Such matters are forbidden to discuss. Jar girls are a revered local tradition. If anyone overhears you, you'd be declared an enemy of the village. I frowned, brushing Bai Yuan's hand aside, and scrutinized the blood trail carefully. It led to the back of the house, and just as I was about to follow, Bai Yuan's voice stopped me. Why would there be rouge on a man's face? His tone was neither calm nor ordinary but laden with a menacing depth. I turned back, catching the unguarded look on Bai Yuan's face, cold, calculating. Bai Yuan, what of it if there's rouge on my face? Isn't it customary for court officials to wear a bit? Bai Yuan's expression carried a hint of astonishment. Turning angrily, I sighed deeply and traced the bloodstains to the back of the house. A quiet sigh of relief escaped me. Bai Yuan was certainly no ordinary individual. As I entered the backyard, I was confronted with a scene that would haunt me forever. Rows of jars were meticulously arranged on the ground, covered with flies that feasted on the rotting flesh. Some skulls were fully decomposed, while others, not yet dead, stared at me with eyes wide open. He he he. Their shrill voices pierced my ears, echoing in my brain like malevolent spirits. The incessant sounds, as though they had discovered some spectacle, continued to echo. Looking up at the unusually high walls surrounding the area, I suddenly understood. It turned out that a shrine maiden was concealing something here. A body lay in the center. Stooping down, I flipped it over. A swarm of flies cloaked the corpse, scattering in an instant and sending a shiver through me as my hair stood on edge. The face was beyond recognition, yet his fingers gestured to one side. Raising my eyes, I encountered Bai Yuan, his expression steeped in remorse. "My lord, I should never have doubted you." I shook my head, eyeing the shrine maidens who had fallen into a sudden hush, my bewilderment growing. "Bai Yuan, how would things be different if I were a woman?" Bai Yuan paused, taken aback. "Perhaps they would have turned you into a shrine maiden. This village harbors a deep mistrust of outsiders, particularly women." I pondered this silently, resolving to delve deeper into the village. It was then that I was seized. When I opened my eyes, I was confronted by an enormous face. At first glance, it was mesmerizingly beautiful, with features so vivid they seemed painted. But horror struck at the second glance, for below the neck, there was nothing but the shrine enclosing the body. Had I not been exposed to prior scenes, it would have been nearly impossible to keep from screaming. Yet, the direct confrontation with the altar maiden delivered a significant shock. I swallowed hard. "You're awake now." Her voice was soft, not at all like those of the spirits. I steadied my nerves. Why am I here? I clearly remembered heading out to investigate the village, with Bai Yuan in tow, leading the way. As we walked, an intense dizziness struck me, and I blacked out. It was an ambush I hadn't anticipated. "My father brought you here to keep me company," she said. The altar maiden smiled, and before I could speak, a woman entered, bearing a basin of water. She withdrew a small bag, tipping a dusting of powder into the water. She then poured the water through a slit in the container. Instantly, the altar maiden's face brightened with an ecstatic look, reminiscent of a felon I had once detained. Yet the criminal was only so because of the addictive drug he'd taken. The woman glanced at me and sighed. "You foolish girl. Why did you wander off? Now you've really put your life at risk." How did she know I was a woman? As if reading my mind, she pointed at me and commented, "Your build and demeanor are too delicate. It's clear at first glance you're a woman." Clear at first glance. Had Bai Yuan realized this as well? Then why did he feel the need to inquire before? Who exactly is Bai Yuan? My mind teemed with questions. After the woman exited, only the altar maiden and I remained. "Are you pleased? You're about to meet the god." "God?" Desire washed over the altar maiden's face. "The god is our protector. He is both handsome and majestic. It is our privilege to become his nourishment." My pupils narrowed. Nourishment. Was it what I thought it meant? I wished to inquire further, but the altar maiden's face alternated between maniacal and mesmerized, unmistakably addicted. In such a condition, no rational information could be gleaned. The powder sprinkled into the water was strikingly similar to the addictive substance associated with a fugitive I had apprehended in the capital. With effort, I moved my arm, retrieved a hidden knife, and severed the ropes that bound me. Divine emissary. This woman would make an exquisite altar maiden. "Hold off. The god has his intentions." Voices filtered in from outside. Lacking time to properly hide, I swiftly ascended to a beam, using the angle to shield my presence. The figure that entered wore a mask, his voice deep and commanding. As they realized I was missing, the old woman began questioning the altar maiden in panic. But the altar maiden, unable to articulate anything, merely smiled vacuously at the masked man. "It's fine, the master has stated that the more such women are transformed into altar maidens, the greater their effectiveness, so you need not interfere." As he walked off, the jade pendant at his waist tinkled distinctly. A wave of unsettling familiarity washed over me. I had either encountered him before or heard the unique tinkle of such a pendant. After their departure, I hastily made my escape. In this village, without specific medicines, my presence remains undetected by the common folk. Vigilance was crucial, especially regarding the mysterious masked man. "Sir!" Looking up, I saw Bai Yuan calling out to me. Standing by the river, Bai Yuan gestured to me. In my view, he bore an eerie resemblance to the Grim Reaper brandishing his scythe. "Bai Yuan, what is your true identity?" I halted, watching as Bai Yuan's expression briefly hardened. Continuing to smile, Bai Yuan replied, "Sir, whatever do you mean? The jade pendant dangling from your waist is fashioned from the finest mutton fat jade, a luxury few in this humble county could afford." Bai Yuan gave a brief laugh, quickly resuming a sycophantic smile. "Sir, as you've noted, though costly, some can indeed afford it. Why do you suspect me?" I felt for the knife hidden at my lower back, eyes locked on Bai Yuan. "That night, upon finding the bloodstain, you didn't ask if the magistrate had survived. Instead, you immediately mentioned the altar maiden. Your knowledge of her is profound. How were you so certain that the blood wasn't the magistrate's?" Bai Yuan stopped in his tracks. "No closer," his expression feigning sorrow. "Sir, you do me a great injustice. Bai Yuan has lived here long and is intimately acquainted with the altar maiden." "Is that so?" My alertness peaked, mindful of past deceit. I held my breath, resolved to preempt any further tricks. It was crucial to subdue him before demanding answers. Yet as I began to move, an unexpected blend of perfumes and powders assaulted my senses, overwhelmingly potent. In my last conscious moment, Bai Yuan drew nearer, ensnaring me in his embrace. Darkness took me once again. Gazing at the dim light flickering before me, I shook my head, bewildered. Before, I had been forcibly drowned, and now I was bound to a bed, atop a thick mattress. I forced myself to gather my thoughts, methodically sorting through each clue I had gathered. The villagers possess a mysterious, possibly addictive powder. This substance may have already infiltrated the capital. I've previously detained individuals who've used something similar. The villagers revere an unnamed deity, whose emissaries transmit his decrees. From all signs, Bai Yuan is likely one of these emissaries. The villagers, and the altar maiden they control with this powder, believe her to be a divine sacrifice. Bai Yuan has intimated that the altar maiden is integral to crafting an elixir of eternal life. Are the villagers aware of this truth? Are they knowingly or unwittingly preparing the altar maiden? Bai Yuan has fixated on me because women nearer to the imperial city are preferred candidates for the altar maiden. I shuddered. The revelation was chilling. Unless curbed, this threat might soon claim victims beyond this modest village. Additionally, that enigmatic powder, which incapacitated me twice without a trace, must not escape. Its origin demands investigation. Creak! The door swung open, the newcomer refraining from lighting a lamp. I swiftly closed my eyes, my mind racing with strategies to counter Bai Yuan. Against all expectations, someone began to free me from my bonds. In the faint light, the face of an old man appeared exceedingly ominous. "Child, flee now and never return." The old man was urging me towards the exit, but I quickly restrained him. "Elder, who are you? What does all this mean?" There were still uncontrolled people in the village. I had no time for more questions as footsteps clattered outside. I watched in astonishment as the elder hoisted a bookshelf, revealing a secret chamber behind it. "Quick!" Inside, the old man, cheeks flushed with effort, insisted. Without time to ponder what might lie ahead, I hurriedly retreated into the hideout. At its end, I pushed through the underbrush above. Raising my head, I was startled to see a self-portrait of the magistrate. Surveying the surroundings, the room was thick with dust, clearly uninhabited for a long time. An epiphany dawned on me. This was the magistrate's mansion. This corridor connected directly to the magistrate's residence. But who had created it? With the magistrate gone, what did he understand about the village's strangeness? An idea struck, and I swiftly climbed out a window, hiding in the shadows to keep a vigilant watch over both the passage and the magistrate's residence. No sooner had I concealed myself than a familiar figure appeared from the hidden path. The masked man. Indeed, he was privy to this secret route. Tragically, the elder, believing he had unearthed a path to salvation, had earnestly intended to help the girls flee their nightmare. Little did he know, he had opened a gateway to a deeper darkness. I inhaled sharply, my heart heavy with regret. The masked man, not only engaged in the merciless creation of altar maidens, also dominates the entire village. I didn't remain there, instead heading back to where I initially discovered the corpse in the underbrush. Aligning the skeletal hand with the marks in the foliage, I followed its direction. Predictably, another secret tunnel revealed itself. Resigned to the fact that such a small village harbored numerous underground passages, which might someday collapse, I pressed on without further remark. I lit a torch and advanced through the tunnel. Ahead, light illuminated a desk adorned with several books and a human anatomy chart hanging on the wall. I thoroughly perused the books before slumping down in the chair, exhausted. These texts contained spells from the western regions. The procedures for fashioning altar maidens were sourced here. They also outlined the crafting of addictive herbs. A line resonated deeply. This herb, once ingested, must be continuously consumed, or the soul will fragment. I struck the desk in anger. Such audacity could not be permitted in my domain. I composed a letter to the Justice Department of the Southern Province, commanding them to dispatch troops post-haste. Afterwards, I ventured back into the desolate village to discreetly seek the old man who might hold further clues. Yet this time, as soon as I entered the village, someone detected my presence. How could this be with these villagers? My thoughts were abruptly cut short. It's her, that's her. The one who enraged the gods. Capture her. The villagers, their faces masked in rage but eyes lost in confusion, were manipulated by the masked man. Before I could seek cover, I was encircled by the villagers. I sighed internally, my knife hanging heavy. I could not strike these innocent people. Stop! A commanding voice, youthful yet deep, halted the villagers in their tracks. I raised my gaze to meet that of the masked man from before. I met his look with a cold scoff. Your efforts are appreciated. Now hand her to me. The gods grow restless. He tapped a nearby wooden box, unveiling a stash of powder that, once aired, cast the villagers into a state of frenzy and paranoia. I steeled myself for a confrontation. The masked man, seemingly amused by my defiance, gestured at me, and my senses began to cloud. You erred in returning my beauty. As my eyes fluttered open, I found myself in a changed yet familiar environment. This time, I was within a gloomy chamber in his dwelling. The air was thick with foreboding, cobwebs draped the walls, and beside me lay the remains of an altar maiden. Only half of her body was left, twisted at the base of the cauldron. Since you are to be transformed into an altar maiden, let's make it pleasant, for both of us. The instant I laid eyes on you, I recognized you as a woman from the shadow of the imperial city. If not for, he hesitated, the assertion that you could be transformed into an elixir of immortality, I wouldn't have waited until now. His hands crept over my body, inducing revulsion. Bai Yuan, must we still indulge in this charade? The masked man gave a subdued chuckle, peeled off his mask, and tossed it carelessly to the ground, unveiling a visage marred by lasciviousness. Bai Yuan continued to smile at me, his grin morphing into something far more sinister. The women before you were tedious, merely weeping and wailing. You, however, are different. A woman from the capital. I have yet to savor such a delight. Bai Yuan licked his lips, his gaze locked onto me. You're dreaming. Over my dead body will I let you succeed. I fought back desperately, prepared to face the end. Cease your struggles. I am a divine envoy. With a single word, I can claim what I seek, even at the cost of every soul in this village. He reached forward to rip at my clothes. Bai Yuan, stop. An elderly voice pierced the tense air. I spun around, astonished to see the old man who had recently aided me. Could he possibly know Bai Yuan? Father! Bai Yuan appeared unexpectedly flustered by a familiar presence. Did you think letting her go would prevent me from bringing her back? How absurd. I neglected to tell you that every soul you once freed, I ultimately ushered into a heavenly paradise where they basked in bliss. They were profoundly grateful to me. With their dying breaths, they wept with gratitude, hailing me as their god, their only god. Bai Yuan was lost in his grand delusions, and the nature of their relationship astounded me. Indeed, this might be why this elder was not subdued by the powder. Bai Yuan's vestiges of humanity had spared his own father. Tears streamed down Elder Bai's face. Bai Yuan, cease this. Do not deepen your transgressions. 10 years ago, you came back from the capital intent on opening a medical clinic. I spent our entire fortune to make it possible. And what did you do? How did you treat those who sought your help? They all perished. Our ancestors were esteemed healers. How can you face the villagers who nurtured you? Not to mention our ancestors. Bai Yuan's father raised his hand, attempting to grapple with Bai Yuan, but was forcefully pushed to the ground, emitting a painful cry. You stubborn old man, I've tolerated your past misdeeds, but do you really think I wouldn't dare touch you? As Bai Yuan's menacing visage loomed, a chill swept over me. Stop, sir. Please go, I'll manage. Bai Yuan sneered. Ha! What a spectacle. You're already overwhelmed, yet you still fret over this old man's welfare. This is fitting. You are indeed the perfect sacrificial maiden. Bai Yuan, losing patience, advanced towards me. I gripped the silver needle I had withdrawn from my sleeve, carefully calculating the distance and the force needed for an unexpected strike. 3, 2. At that critical moment, chaos erupted. Bai Yuan's father, with sudden vigor, lunged from behind, wrapping his arms around his son's waist. As if a lethal blow had struck him, Bai Yuan coughed up a torrent of blood that splattered onto me, and he collapsed, lifeless, his eyes wide open. He gasped amidst the blood. The punishment of the gods punishment. And with that, he was gone. Bai Yuan was dead. Poor Bai Yuan's father, tormented by paternal affection, believed he had killed his son and wept uncontrollably upon realization. After the drug's effects subsided, I quickly helped Bai Yuan's father up and checked the body. Bai Yuan bore no external injuries, though his fingertips were ominously blue. It's poison. Someone had poisoned Bai Yuan. A sudden memory of Bai Yuan's earlier pause struck me. If it weren't for your supposed ability to produce an elixir of life, I wouldn't have waited till today. Who claimed I could concoct such an elixir? Could the real perpetrator be someone else? Bai Yuan's father seemed to have aged decades in just moments, his vitality drained. Elder, someone exploited Bai Yuan and even poisoned him. Did you notice anything unusual surrounding him? Bai Yuan's father met my gaze, his expression pained and unseeing. Finding him unresponsive, I urged him to find solace in his grief. The whole situation felt surreal, as though an invisible force was orchestrating the events of this case. I was resolute in unmasking this concealed adversary. I instructed Bai Yuan's father to remain sequestered in the hidden room and not to emerge. Then I steadied myself and returned to the village. What I found next was even more startling. The village was completely deserted. It resembled a ghost town. I searched every dwelling, yet there was no trace of anyone. The food and money remained untouched, and there were no indications of a hasty departure. After circling the village twice without any leads, a shadow unexpectedly darted from behind a building. I quickly chased it down and caught the person. Upon closer inspection, Bai Yuan's father? He appeared healthy and vibrant, markedly different from before. Ha ha ha! Child, what do you need? My bewilderment intensified. You don't recognize me? Alarmed, I pressed urgently. What has happened to you? Did you ingest something? At that, Bai Yuan's father's demeanor shifted, and he then spoke in a conspiratorial tone. That elixir devised by the sacrificial maiden is simply spectacular. Ha ha ha. You should taste it too. It's utterly memorable. Sacrificial Maiden. With a grave countenance, I watched as Bai Yuan's father retrieved a small pouch and tipped its powdery contents into his mouth. His eyes glazed over, resembling a destitute man who had fortuitously struck riches. Alas, the schemer behind the scenes had ensnared Bai Yuan's father as well. Yet something didn't add up. Bai Yuan's father had remained in Bai Yuan's concealed room, right where Bai Yuan's corpse still lay, and he hadn't ventured out as per my directive. Since leaving that room, I had been close to the village, monitoring all movements. No one had entered or departed. How then had the plotter achieved this? Could he navigate through air or burrow underground? I gently persuaded Bai Yuan's father to take me to the source of the sacrificial maiden's concoction. The deity is holding a séance in the temple. I'll guide you there, and you'll surely wish to join us. Gods again, and now a temple was involved. Bai Yuan's father led me back to the shadowy confines of Bai Yuan's hidden chamber. The chamber was small and gloomily lit, with Bai Yuan's body still lying stark and unmoved. Bai Yuan's father, ignoring the corpse, adjusted a vessel that contained parts of a sacrificial maiden. Suddenly, a new secret passage materialized. Ah, the revelation! The temple was situated beneath the earth. I ought to have suspected as much after encountering countless secret passageways and underground chambers. The puppeteer behind all this had likely linked the entire subterranean network. I daubed my face with ash and placed 2 small bundles of black cloth in my nostrils, following Bai Yuan's father with caution. Inside, the temple was adorned with towering statues of exotic deities from the western regions, differing from those revered in our dynasty. Beneath the towering effigies of deities, a man clad in a dark robe and wearing a mask identical to Bai Yuan's addressed the assemblage of villagers who had previously disappeared. I am pleased to join this séance, though regrettably, an unwanted guest has intruded upon us. As he finished, every villager's eyes shifted towards me. I was swiftly apprehended. Excellent. These are your rewards. What unfolded next was a scene I will never erase from my memory. The villagers, like feral creatures, howled and charged towards the powder, violently assaulting one another for mere scraps of it. You embody depravity. You will surely face your comeuppance. With a flick of his hand, darkness enveloped me. I loathed how prone I was to fainting. How many times had this occurred? I was bound to a colossal chopping block, as the man studied my face with an obsessive allure. So remarkably alike. Out of the corner of my eye, I glimpsed a corpse encased in ice, bearing an uncanny resemblance to my own visage. The man lifted off his mask. It was the elderly man I had encountered at the entrance to the desolate village. I was utterly stunned. How could this be? How could this man, appearing every bit the frail elder who might die from the slightest strain, possess the energy to orchestrate such macabre acts? A moment later, my misconceptions were dispelled. He breathed in the powder and was transformed, his visage radiant and vigorous. Is it you, my child? Have you returned? His mental state was profoundly unstable, compelling me to first calm him. Yes, I'm back. What have you been up to all these years? He squinted at me as he crouched by my side. When we arrived from the western regions, I dreamt of a tranquil life here with you. But then, 10 years ago, you died. I sought justice from the local authorities, but they dismissed our plight because we were from the western regions, saying it wasn't their problem. My fury was boundless. My daughter's death remained unexplained. One night, Bai Yuan, inebriated, confessed. It was he who had accidentally killed you. That beast. I had thought you two had a loving relationship, but it turned out you were coerced. I wanted to end his life, but a simple death was too lenient. All those from the Central Plains deserved retribution. I concocted a potion using addictive herbs from our homeland. First, I killed the county magistrate. As for that monster, I convinced him the potion could cure any ailment. To my astonishment, he believed it and took it. Ha 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 ha. Such a fool. He deserved his fate, as did all those who simply watched. My scheme grew larger, until these fools began venerating me as a deity. Now you're back, and at last I can rest easy. I inwardly sighed. Such was the harsh reality. He closed his eyes, and just as I started to move away, his eyes abruptly snapped open. I can't sleep. You are the prime material. I intend to make you into a sacrificial maiden. Then, I will craft the most potent addictive herb. He let out a chilling, unnatural sound as he inscribed strange symbols in blood on the ground. He stared at me with obsessive intensity, his eyes alight with boundless hope. Yes, it is you who will be the perfect sacrificial maiden, utterly irreplaceable. His mind was adrift, at times confusing me with his daughter. No, she's my child. No, that's not right. He was on the brink of a mental breakdown. Delay could lead to greater calamity. So I deployed the silver needle I had spared from Bai Yuan on him. Relying on drugs for years had made him outwardly strong but hollow inside. The needle's effect was swift, his complexion turning a visible shade of gray. With his remaining strength, he staggered to the ice coffin and began hammering it until it split, revealing the girl within. She appeared almost lifelike. He embraced her. The girl's corpse decayed rapidly, and he expired with clear eyes. My child, we are reunited at last. When the criminal investigators from Nanzhou stormed in, I was seated on the ground. The entire ordeal was grotesque. As a father, he had wrought havoc upon an entire village for his daughter. The villagers were led back to Nanzhou by the investigators, and the bodies of the sacrificial maidens and other victims were examined by the coroner before being interred in the small deserted village. I meticulously arranged all the case files, sealed the addictive herbs, and uncovered the precisely dosed sedative used by the murderer, both on his person and in his residence, which I reported to the imperial court. Gazing upon the altered, barren village, I was moved to somber reflection. Had the county magistrate at the time pursued a thorough investigation, perhaps this catastrophe could have been prevented. Countless families would not have been devastated. The tragedy, like a snowball rolling downhill, would not have grown with such ferocity. I submitted a petition to the emperor, requesting to temporarily assume the magistrate's duties until the village could heal and a suitable successor be appointed. May such tragedies never befall this world again.